Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Weekly Egg Point. This week we are taking a brief break from our F-Zero retrospective and we are instead playing Grid Autosport Egg. That's the joke. It's Egg Weekend. Happy Egg Weekend to all who celebrate. You may be wondering, Christian, why are we playing Grid Autosport? And it's for a few reasons. First of all, this is the first time that I am playing Grid Autosport on a Weekly Waypoint. And you might be saying, no, it's not. Christian, you've played it before? Well, I haven't played the Switch version before. That's right, the Switch version is on sale, and I decided to pick it up because I've always wanted a decent Simcade racer on the Switch. And it was a tenner, and I'm playing it on the Switch too, so it's also worth noting that it doesn't have like a Switch 2 patch or anything. This is still just for Switch 1 game, but if it's hitting a more consistent frame rate target, that might be why, although I'm sure it ran fine on Switch 1 too. It's worth noting this is not Grid Legends, which is a Switch 2 game which came out, well, I say fairly recently. The Switch 2 is still a fairly recent console, but yes, and it came out to be like the Grid Legends to the Switch 1's Grid Autosport, I suppose. But I haven't bothered picking that up on Switch 2, even though that's also on sale, because I actually picked up Grid Legends fairly recently, just last year on PC, and played through the campaign there and had a really good time. And I think if I'm going to play any more Grid Legends, it's going to be on Steam. But who knows, maybe one day it'll go for sale super cheap and I'll get it on Switch 2 as well down the line. But I think it's fair to say that Grid Autosport specifically is one of my favourite racing games of all time. It holds up so well. For reference, this was originally like a PS3 era game. This came out on the PS3, I'm pretty sure. So it's cool to see it here, and I am using the performance mode, so it's running at 60 frames a second, so the graphics aren't what they could be. I do hope that they go back and just make a patch which enables you to play quality mode on Switch 2 at 60 frames a second. I'm sure it would be fine, but maybe it would require more testing and tweaking than I am imagining. But the reason you don't see too many quote-unquote serious racing games on Switch is because they don't have what's the phrase? They don't have like proper triggers. They don't have it where you can hold down the trigger midway to get half acceleration or whatever. It's either go or don't go. And I think I've heard that Grid Autosport, and I assume Legends, has an option to use the right analog stick as the kind of like acceleration pedal, but that sounds a little weird to me, so I haven't bothered checking that out just yet. And to be honest, the way I race in these games, I'm usually an all-or-nothing kind of acceleration guy anyway. I just hold off the acceleration when I need to sometimes instead of braking, so it's not really a big deal for me. But something I have noticed, which I haven't had difficulties with in the PC version of the game, is you may have noticed from my gameplay footage here, my car is occasionally slowing down. That's not me doing that sometimes. Sometimes it is. But sometimes it's just the game doing that. It's like not allowing me to accelerate anymore despite me still holding down the accelerator, and it's not a bug, and it's not like something wrong with my controller, because it's happening at specific intervals on the track at every lap. And I'm assuming it's one of the assists that is enabled by default on this difficulty that I've chosen, but I've toggled them all on or off at various points and it still happens, and I don't know why. So now I'm thinking, because I don't remember having this issue with the PC version of the game, maybe it's another answer to their whole, like, you can't hold the trigger halfway down thing, and maybe it's like the game's way of assisting you with acceleration when it thinks you might want to accelerate a little bit more slowly in a particular portion of the track. It's probably just one of the assists and I haven't figured it out. If anyone knows which one it is, let me know, because I want to turn that off. I'm getting used to having it on, but it feels a little too handholdy. It feels a little too heavy-handed in, you know, the game is controlling how fast my vehicle accelerates. Well, then what's the point in me driving? The game's doing it for me. You know, not quite that bad. We're not talking like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe assists level of bad. But yeah, it's aggravating. But yeah, I'm really happy to have this game on the Switch, and I thought I'd better pick it up before it drops off the face of the earth, as racing games tend to do. This does come with an online mode, which it advertises heavily, but unfortunately that online mode, from what I saw the other day when I checked it out, is as dead as it is on PC. But it's still cool that it's live and available for people to go and play if they want to. But yeah, Grid Autosport remains one of my favourite racing games, and it's nice to have it on Switch because there's a lot less racing options on Switch, and so you know, if I'm playing it on PC, I'm going, yeah, I really like this game, but let's be real, I own more modern Simcade racing games that have iterated on this before, and maybe I should just be playing those instead. Whereas here, it's, you know, we do have the Grid Legends option in the store, of course, but other than that, it's like, you know, there's not many racing games like this on the Switch, and it's cool to be able to play it handheld, and yeah, I really like having it on the Switch. But anyway, that's quite enough about Grid Autosport, but not quite enough about auto sport in general, because I have been, I wouldn't say chasing a new hyperfixation this week, but I've been revisiting an old burgeoning one, and that is Formula 1, which is interesting because I'm still not experiencing Formula 1 the way you might expect. Last time I talked about getting into it, I was exploring the options on their website for like how to watch it, how to get into it, and they had like a £1 a month subscription or something, and it gave you access to their archives of like documentaries about Formula 1 races in the 60s and stuff, and I ended up getting lost in that instead of actually just watching modern Formula 1. It's a sport that feels a little bit intimidating to try and get into because, I guess probably like all sports, the commentators assume you already know what's happening and who these people are and the regulations and all this stuff. But there's a documentary series on Netflix called Formula 1 Drive to Survive, and that, as it turns out, is a fantastic entry into the sport because it's a documentary series that not only like shows you key moments from various races or whatever, but it kind of creates this narrative of what's happening in each season and the various drivers and teams and the politics behind some of those relationships. And you know, it shows you moments from the races which are you know, direct results of some of those real world ramifications, and it's really interesting. I'm watching the 2018 series, so series 1 of that documentary series. They've done one for each series so far since then. And I thought instead of just diving into the latest one, I might as well give myself a decent bit of runway ahead of me. So I'm watching the 2018 series, and it's really fun to follow these stories. I'm near the end of season 1 now, documenting that season. Oh my god. And honestly, I'm kind of hooked. I can see what Grid Legends were spoofing with their particular campaign story, which, by the way, I did enjoy, so there's that. And it's just wild to me seeing these people put their lives on the line for this sport, and like the kind of psychology behind those people and like some of their egos, and you know, like I'm not saying like I love them all, but there are definitely some drivers that I end up rooting for because they seem more genuine than others and stuff like that. So yeah, my general plan is to get caught up to the latest racing season, and then maybe check out what's happening however long that takes me, probably later this year, maybe next year, and then like see if I can dive into following the sport. I've heard it's not in a good place at the minute, which is a bit of a shame, but hopefully that rights itself soon enough. So there you go. Sports! If there was ever a sport that I was personally going to get invested in, it was going to be Formula 1. I'm not really about that football life, or that rugby life, or that tennis life, or that golfing life, but I am about that racing life. Now, while we're on real world topics, before we get into what I've been playing this week, I want to talk about the Artemis 2 mission, which is currently sending astronauts to the moon, around the moon specifically. We're not landing on it this time around, but it is the first time we've visited the moon since Apollo 17 back in the 70s, and that's really bloody cool. It's the first time we're visiting the moon in my life, and I've been following this very closely. And my favorite thing about this mission is that they've been live streaming the entire journey. They've got a live stream feed, which occasionally cuts out because, you know, space and bandwidth and all that stuff. But for the most part, the feed's been up. And today, as of the time of recording, the moon is so close that you can see bumps on the horizon. Like, it's not just like a perfect circle like we're used to seeing, because we're used to seeing it from so far away. But you can actually see, like, where the craters and the various, like, just hills and shit, I guess. The hills isn't the right word, but it's bumpy. It's a bumpy circle now, and that's so cool. Every day I've been loading up that feed and just getting more excited at the moon getting bigger every time I see it. And today, in fact, around the time that this video goes live, so you're probably watching this after this has happened, they're gonna be going around the moon, which is very, very exciting. I assume the live stream will cut out because the feed will be interrupted by a moon's worth of rock between the ship and planet Earth, but I'm sure they'll record it at least. And yeah, it's, I mean, you can, here's the thing, you can reduce it, right? You can abstract it down to its base parts and say, okay, it's a bunch of people in a ship going around a rock really far away. What's so exciting about that? But for me, it's very much like what it represents, which is human ingenuity and really intelligent people and really brave people working together. And they've been saying things as well, like we've been getting interviews with them as time allows, and I recommend watching them because it's incredible hearing them talk about their experiences. And they've talked about how, like, looking back at the planet, it really reinforces the perspective that we're all one people and that we live in an oasis, you know, amongst a vast sea of nothingness. And so we should really protect this planet. And I think just given everything that's happening in the world right now, all the strife and division and war and shit, it's something hopeful that's actually bringing people together. Like, I've spoken to so many people whose eyes light up when I talk about this, and they're not even people who would normally like be paying all that much attention to astronomy. I'm not paying all that much attention to astronomy if we really get down to it. Like, I didn't know this mission was happening until probably the day before launch, like, embarrassingly. Aside from like extremely peripheral knowledge of like, oh yeah, aren't we going back to the moon soon or whatever, it didn't really sink in until it was actually happening. But yeah, I think this is really important for us right now as a species, that this is happening. And I think as well it's also important for science and like our continued growth and evolution, because, you know, I've heard some people complain about the amount of money it's costing and all this stuff, and like we should be focusing on fixing our planet before going anywhere else. And to a certain extent, yes, I absolutely agree. But also I think this is part of fixing our planet, you know, like expanding the economy outwards into the solar system and stuff like that. Because the ultimate goal of these Artemis missions is to start like putting permanent structures down on the moon and using it as a base to go and explore other planets in the system and stuff like that. And while it's all very expensive, it's a lot less expensive than these unnecessary wars we keep waging, so there's that. But yeah, I think two things can be true. You can wish that more money was put towards fixing our planet and building a better tomorrow here on Earth, and you can also root for the Artemis missions and the idea of expanding outwards into space, because it will feed back into our planet and helping us. That's my perspective anyway. And on the off chance I have anyone watching this video who you know, is a conspiracy theory nut and doesn't believe that any of this is really happening, and that, you know, a hive mind of the most intelligent people in the world are conspiring to lie to you to make you look silly, see, to those people, I guess I don't really have anything to say to you, actually. Just that they're depriving themselves of something awesome through suspicion, which is unearned, and the desire to be the most intelligent person in the room through extreme cynicism, which just makes them look like the dumbest person in the room to anyone who has an ounce of what's actually happening in reality. There you go. Shall we talk about video games? Okay, so you know how last week I picked up Trials of Mana, and I was like, gonna limit the RPGs I'm playing, and one of them is Trials of Mana, and I'm gonna play through Trials of Mana. I've changed my mind. I want to play through Xenoblade Chronicles, because I've been trying to do that since 2021. The thing is, I've been trying to do that since 2021 on a single save file, and the reason why I think I came to a halt is because I originally watched Chugga Conroy play up to a certain point, and then I played the game up to that certain point, and it kind of just felt like experiencing the same story back to back twice, and that kind of burned me out on the game. And over the course of the last few years, I've occasionally booted it up, played it for like a couple of hours, and put it down again. And it's to the point where now when I boot up the game and I look at it, I go, I mean, I remember the broad strokes of the story probably well enough to not need to replay it, but I don't feel invested in this journey because I've been on it for 5 years, off and on, very occasionally. And so I decided to bite the bullet this week and just start a new Xenoblade Chronicles save file. And you know what? I've been having a really good time, because yes, I remember the broad strokes of a story, but remembering the broad strokes of a story and experiencing it, like all of its, you know, scenes and all that stuff, are two different things. And I forgot I enjoyed the gameplay, and I love the soundtrack, and I love the exploration, and getting immersed in the world, and feeling the vibes of the world, and doing the side quests and all that stuff. And so I'm gonna try my damnedest to play through Xenoblade Chronicles, and not just get to the same point and stop again. Of course, this is dependent on if I'm still invested in the journey, you know, because while I could, in theory, force myself to play through the game if my attention wanders and is suddenly less interested in it, at that point, what would be the point of playing the game? But I feel like, in my heart of hearts, I feel like I can do this. I feel like I can remain interested in this video game from start to finish because it's really good. And I think of other RPGs that I've really enjoyed, or really been enjoying, and wandered off from, like Final Fantasy 16 and Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and I know that I could have stopped myself from wandering off and remained engaged if I had just continued booting the game and playing through it instead of allowing myself to become distracted. I think there's a difference between allowing myself to become distracted and just losing interest in a game, and that sounds like a really obvious observation, but it's one that I'm only just reaching. And I think I need to recognize when I'm being distracted away from a game that I'm still interested in, that's when I should push on and continue playing that game, as opposed to when I'm being distracted away from a game because it is losing my interest, you know? Like, those are two different things that present very similarly behaviorally, but I need to search my feelings and find what is true, because within such activities may lie the ability to enjoy long video games from beginning to end. But yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles, I've just got to the point where we are leaving the first zone properly now, because you do head to Tephra Cave before that part, but you don't see much of it. Now we're heading back to Tephra Cave properly, so that should tell anyone where I am in the story, and I've already been cooking up some theories about things and having a good time. So far though, I've not been recording any footage because I've mentioned this before, but in recent years I've grown very gun-shy about, like, if I'm going to make a video about a great big long RPG journey, because that burns me out on a game a lot quicker, unfortunately. And this really is a game I want to see through, and I want to not feel guilty about playing it in handheld mode, because, you know, I'll be losing footage and stuff if I do that. I just want to play it on my own terms, really. But what I will do is make a video when I finish it, talking about, like, how I felt about the story, and so on and so forth. I recently put out a video in Star Wars The Old Republic, which was me doing this about the Sith Warrior campaign. Unfortunately, it did not get many views. I don't think it hit the algorithm, but I enjoyed making it, and it's the style of video I would like to make when I finish RPGs and stuff, and it might actually inspire me to stick with RPGs and finish them instead of, you know, burning out because I'm editing videos based on my experiences and therefore re-experiencing the story over and over again instead of advancing it. But yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles remains one of those worlds that I'm just so goddamn curious about to learn, you know, what's going on. I think it's my favourite variety of world building, is to set up a world, present it as normal, but we, the reader slash gamer slash viewer, are very much aware that this is not a normal state of affairs, living on a giant mech that died eons ago in battle with another giant mech from which an enemy race of seemingly artificial robots is invading. That's not the normal state of affairs, so how did we get here? You know, like, stories like it, in terms of how it does its world building, I would liken it to Attack on Titan. It's not normal to live in a world where you have to wall yourself off of the majority of the world because it's overrun by man-eating giants. That's not a normal state of affairs. How did we get there? Turns out the way they answered that question was thoroughly interesting. And the amount of praise I've heard for Xenoblade Chronicles makes me wonder if it'll be the same over there too. I'm very interested in how the entire trilogy comes together, and what's going on with X as well. I don't know if that's just a different canon, a different universe or whatever, or if it ties into Chronicles, like the main Chronicles series. I'm excited to find out. And this curiosity has been rattling around in the back of my head for years now. And you know what else was rattling around in the back of my head for years? Attack on Titan, because I watched season 1 and then didn't go back when season 2 came out. And then I went through and binged the entire thing when it was done, and I loved it. So maybe this is just how I appreciate these stories. I have to be curious about them for years before I can build up enough curiosity to play through or watch through the entire length of this very long story. So I'm sorry, Trials of Mana. I'm still happy that I own you, and I will get back to you. In fact, I may even play you concurrently. Who knows? But for now, my main RPG focus, single player that is going to be Xenoblade Chronicles. Speaking of which, also this week, I've been continuing to play Star Wars The Old Republic. I've been continuing along with my Sith Warrior, Iranax, and I played through the Empire side story on Ilum. It's just called Interlude. It's a bit of story between the base game and the first expansion. And it was pretty fun. I don't really remember what happened on the Republic side of Ilum when I played through it a few years ago. But on the Empire side, we meet Darth Malgus, who is currently on all of the promo art, so I assume he's a big deal. And, you know, while at first it felt like a bit of a generic, Empire versus Republic story, it ended up being a little bit more interesting than that. And it introduced us to the idea of solo flashpoints, which, I won't lie, do feel like a little bit of a slog. I remember when I was first playing through the first one on my Jedi a few years ago, I was like, when does it end? Oh god, when does it end? Because while it is a solo dungeon and you do get like companions to help you and stuff, it takes me about an hour because I do like to focus on the bonus objectives and stuff like that. So yeah, it was 2 flashpoints back to back at the end of that story, and they were both about an hour long. But I knew to expect that this time around, so that wasn't such a big deal. And I have stepped foot on Makeb, the planet for Rise of the Hutt Cartels, and begun the Empire side of that story as well. Excitingly, when I finish Rise of the Hutt Cartels, I will be as far through the game as I have ever been. Less excitingly, I've heard bad things about the Shadow of Revan expansion, so shrug. The title of that expansion alone makes me think I may be left a little high and dry if I'm not all that familiar with the KOTOR 1 and 2 story, but I guess we'll see. But I've heard the 2 expansions after that are pure cinema, so I guess I'll get through it. While we're talking MMOs, I did mention a few months ago when I was playing a lot of ESO that I was excited for Season 0 and all of that stuff, and that has now spun up. It's begun. And so I re-downloaded the game to check it out, and if I'm being honest, I feel like this is an update for people who are currently playing the game, who are currently interested in the game. I don't see much value in it for me, looking at it as someone who is already playing another MMO and isn't all that interested in ESO right this minute. I looked through the season pass and the stuff you get in it, and it's mostly just stuff which would be cool to get if I was already playing. It's nothing that's worth going out of my way to play the game to get, if you know what I'm saying. Also, while I know that monetarily it works out as cheaper than their usual yearly content offerings, I can't help the fact that it definitely feels a little pricey given that it's a subscription on top of a subscription. Like, you don't need ESO Plus in order to subscribe to their season pass thing, but at the same time, if you're going to be playing ESO, you kind of want ESO Plus. That being said, I do know that if you buy the premium pass, you lift the time restriction on it, so you can just complete it on your own time, and I am appreciative of that, and I may still do that later down the line. We'll see how it goes, but for now, I don't think I'm diving back into ESO, sorry. Also, I heard that the raid came out for WoW Midnight, like the last one of the main patch, and people seem angry about the final cinematic of the raid, and I'm just sat here having not finished the leveling campaign going, I see what it looks like from the outside now. And I don't feel compelled to continue. I don't know what the raid cinematic is. I don't know what happened. Don't mention it. But I'm at the point where I'm like, it really is just a cycle of game good, game bad, game good, game bad, isn't it? And, you know, not to be dramatic, but why would I play that game when I could just play a new experience in the SWTOR campaign storylines? Also, yesterday I dipped back into Astroneer because Reese was playing Astroneer, and I went, That sure does sound good right about now while I'm looking at 4 very brave human beings going around the moon. And I did pick up Astroneer a few months ago and then I didn't put much time into it, so I have been tinkering in that game. And that's about all I have to say about it, but it's pretty fun. Maybe I will play some more later. Oh, actually that's not all. I also decided to play A Link to the Past in a moment of I don't care how many games I'm currently playing and if I'm going to pick this up and finish it right now. I just want to finally check it out. And you know what? A Link to the Past is a very solid video game. Again, I don't know if I'm going to finish it right now, but I really enjoyed what I played of it. It's very charming. It's one of those games where like I hear background music start up when I enter a town and I go, this is from that game? I reached Kakariko Village and I was like, oh, I think Xeon from Once Upon a Time Nintendo Life used this in his videos fairly often. I always wondered where it was from, and it's from here. But yeah, I did the first dungeon, and it's legitimately a very good game. Coldest take of the century, I know. Although I've got to say, the boomerang is kind of overpowered. Also, just to briefly mention, I read one of my favourite comic stories this week in Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. If you would like to hear my full spoiler thoughts on that, you can go and check that out over on my other channel, Kritigri Talks Stories. But long story short, spoiler-free mode, it's a hell of a journey, and it's one of those comics that I could recommend to anyone, even people who don't read comics. The upcoming Supergirl movie is based on it, although it is remixing a few elements and introducing characters which weren't in the original. But it's got a lot to live up to, I'm realizing now. And I don't know that I necessarily need it to live up to it, because the original will always exist, and the art as well is just so good. I'm now reading the other DC Compact comic I got this month, which is The Flash Rebirth, and I'm surprised to find I'm not actually enjoying it as much as I thought I would, but I'll get into why when I do that video, again over on Kritigri Talks Stories. But that is not a comic I would give to people who don't normally read comics, because it's kind of lost in its own source a little bit so far, but we'll see how it goes. I'm only about a quarter of a way through. Starting to think I'm just a rare Jeff Johns non-enjoyer, because I've read some of his Green Lantern as well, and didn't find myself loving that either, despite it being quite a well-regarded run. Also, something I want to mention, and I might make a video about this on another channel I have called Kritigri Talks Music, or something like that, I forget. I've only got one video over there at the minute, and it's not the newest, but I have been making a playlist of, basically, I called it Paragons. I take one track from an album, and that is the track that goes in the playlist, and I've done it with, like, normal music, I've done it with soundtracks and stuff, and I have quite a lot of tracks in there now. And I kind of want to make a video going through each one and talking about why it's my favourite of that specific album and why it's included. Or maybe why some albums are missing and aren't included and stuff like that. I think it could be a really fun video. But first I need to make sure I'm absolutely done with putting it together for now. I actually did this once before, back on Spotify, probably about a decade ago at this point, so it's fun to do an updated 2026 version and figure out, like, what's still there and where my tastes have changed and things like that. If I do make that video, I'll make a post here on the channel about it and on Blue Sky, just because I know people may not be subscribed to that other channel because it's only got one video on it and I haven't touched it in a long time. Oh, it's called Common-Minded Music. There you go. See, I forgot the name of the damn channel. Anyway, I think that's about going to do it for me today. I've got a week off and I plan to spend it playing Xenoblade Chronicles and trying to finish a bunch of like comics and books and stuff I've left half read, I think. So I'm gonna go crack on with that. Thank you very much for checking out this episode of The Weekly Waypoint. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe if you would like to see more. Other than that, I will catch you in whatever I make next.